People at the ceremony thought the man slipping quietly into the back row was just a tired school janitor, late for yet another shift nobody thanked him for. But they didn't know the truth, not until a Navy captain spotted a faded tattoo on the man's wrist and suddenly froze, eyes filling with tears. In an instant, everything the crowd believed about that janitor, that father, and that graduating boy unraveled. What happened next changed every life in that stadium. No one really paid attention to Henry Mallon. They rarely did. That was the thing about being a janitor. Your job was to make yourself invisible. Sweep, clean, fix what's broken, stay out of the way. Henry didn't mind. He wasn't the kind of man who wanted applause or compliments. Life had carved him quiet. Years of heartbreak had smoothed his voice into something soft, and long nights working 2 jobs had curved his shoulders forward like he was always apologizing for taking up space. But today was different. Today was his son's high school graduation, and even though Henry had taken every extra shift for months to afford a decent shirt and the rental suit jacket, he still felt like an intruder walking across the stadium parking lot. Families arrived in shiny cars, mothers carrying flowers, fathers in crisp shirts with cameras around their necks. Henry climbed down from his old truck, its paint peeling, its tires crying for retirement, and smoothed the thrift store jacket over the faded tattoos on his forearms. One tattoo in particular he always kept hidden. Not because he was ashamed, but because it hurt too much to be seen. He walked toward the ceremony alone, clutching the invitation his son Ethan had taped to the fridge. "Dad, I want you there. Front row if you can." Henry had nodded, but he'd known he wouldn't sit in the front. Pride was for parents who had given their kids everything. Parents who didn't miss birthdays because of double shifts. Parents who didn't fall asleep at the kitchen table with bills scattered like accusations. Parents who weren't him. He entered the stadium quietly, finding a seat in the very back row. He didn't want to embarrass Ethan. Even though Ethan always said he wasn't embarrassed. Even though the boy swore he was proud of him. Henry knew teenagers were kind when they loved you, but the world wasn't. Kids talked. Parents whispered. He'd heard them before. "Ethan's father is the janitor." Poor kid. Henry never wanted Ethan to hear those words again. As he sat down, he saw his son among the graduating class, standing tall in cap and gown, scanning the crowd. Searching for him. Henry ducked slightly and gave a small wave when Ethan's eyes found his. Ethan's face lit up, and for a moment, Henry felt something warm burst in his chest, something he hadn't felt since the days before Ethan's mother passed. Pride. Hope. Maybe even joy. But then, as the ceremony began, Henry noticed someone else in the crowd. A man in full Navy dress uniform, a captain, judging by the stripes. He walked with an air of confidence, nodding politely at people who greeted him. He looked like the kind of man Henry once imagined he'd be, before life took him in another direction. The captain passed by the back row, pausing only when he glanced at Henry. Henry immediately tucked his wrist beneath his sleeve, but it was too late. The captain's eyes had caught the mark, the faded ink of a unit tattoo that existed only among a certain group of men who had lived through something most people never would. The captain froze mid-step. His expression changed. His breath caught. And slowly, like a man seeing a ghost, he turned fully to face Henry. Henry swallowed hard. He wasn't prepared for this. And the captain whispered, "It's you! Dear God, you're alive?" Before Henry could respond, a hush fell over the stadium as the principal began announcing names. But the captain didn't move. And for the first time in years, Henry realized something he tried hard to forget. You can be invisible, but your past never is. Henry sat rigid in his seat as the Navy captain approached. He hated attention. He had built his life on staying unseen, unnoticed, untouched by the shadows of his past. But now the captain stood in front of him, towering with disbelief, his voice trembling with emotions Henry hadn't heard in a long time. "Petty Officer Mallon, it is you," the captain said quietly, as though saying it too loud would make Henry vanish. Henry's lungs tightened. It had been years since anyone used his title, Years since anyone recognized him for something other than a mop in his hands. "Sir, please," Henry whispered. "Not here." But the captain couldn't stop staring at the tattoo peeking from beneath Henry's sleeve, an emblem belonging to a search and rescue unit that suffered one of the worst missions in its division's history. Only 3 men survived it. And every record showed Henry Mallon wasn't one of them. The captain's voice cracked. We held a ceremony for you. A memorial. We folded a flag for your family. Your name is on a wall. Henry, we thought you died saving those kids that night." Henry looked away. "That's exactly why I wanted to stay gone." Before the captain could respond, the crowd erupted as a student crossed the stage. Families cheered. Cameras clicked. But the 2 men in the back row remained in a stillness untouched by celebration. The captain took the seat beside Henry without asking. "Why didn't you come back?" Henry closed his eyes, feeling the weight of years he never spoke about. "Because I didn't want Ethan growing up with people expecting him to be a hero's son. I wanted him to have a normal life, not be the kid people point at. And I didn't want him knowing how much I failed." "Failed?" The captain looked at him sharply. "You saved 11 lives. You carried those children out one by one until the building collapsed." Henry shook his head. "I didn't save my wife." The captain fell silent. He understood now, the real grief, the real reason Henry disappeared. Henry explained quietly. "Sarah died that same year. I couldn't face the military, the ceremonies, the questions. I just walked away. Became a janitor. Something simple. Something quiet. Ethan was 4. He never needed a hero. He needed a father who came home every night." The captain's eyes softened with sorrow. "Henry, Ethan deserves to know the truth. You are not a failure. You're one of the bravest men I've ever served with." Henry didn't respond. His gaze was locked on his son, who was now inching closer to the front of the line. Ethan's name would be called soon. "I'm nothing more than a janitor," Henry said. "Then why?" the captain whispered. "Do your hands still shake like a soldier listening for danger? Why does the battlefield never leave your eyes?" Henry swallowed hard. He hated how easily his past resurfaced. But before he could answer, the speakers crackled and the principal's voice rang out. "Next we proudly present Ethan Mallon." Ethan stepped forward, smiling wide, until he glanced back at the stands and saw his father standing. Because Henry had risen to his feet without realizing it. Maybe from instinct. Maybe from pride. Maybe because the captain had unknowingly pulled a broken part of him back together. The captain stood too. The entire crowd turned slightly toward the unusual movement in the back row. Noticing the uniform. Noticing the janitor beside him. And Ethan froze on the stage as he saw the captain salute. But the salute wasn't for Ethan. It was for Henry. Gasps rippled through the stands. The stadium fell completely silent. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he realized, maybe for the first time, that his father wasn't just a man who worked nights to pay rent. He was someone extraordinary. And the tattoo the captain recognized was about to change everything.